Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to go into a case study here that helps answer a question I've been getting a lot the last few years, quite frankly. And that's, I know we meant to plan for retirement at 65, but can I do it sooner? In this case, we're going to look at Mitchell Pritchett and Cameron Tucker, and we built a plan for them around age 65 retiring, but they're done with work. I get that a lot from people, and they want to retire at the end of this year, right before they turn 60. How do we make those adjustments, and can it work for them? Let's get into it. So first, let's just get to know Cameron and Mitchell. They are 59. They're going to turn 60 on January 1 next year. Mitchell has 275,000 in RRSPs. Cameron has 120,000 in RRSPs. They both have done a really good job with the TFSAs. They have $90,000 each in TFSAs. And they'll be getting 85 and 75% respectively on CPP, along with 100% of old age security. They're also in Ontario, and they have a house that's worth about $750,000 that they currently owe $75,000 on because they just did a big kitchen renovation. They're obviously going to have to carry some of that debt into retirement. If we come in here, this is their baseline scenario, assuming that they retire at age 65. So the first thing, if you've seen the channel, you know this. The first thing I look for is I just scroll down. Are there any years highlighted in red, which means they've run out of money? And there's not. So that's a great thing. So let's go look at some of the charts here just to kind of see what things look like from a really high level view. So these are a couple of charts that I go through with all of my clients. We have the cash outflow here, the cash inflow here, and the one I actually want to focus on here is the net worth chart. And again, this is very high level right now. Not a lot of detail here, but we can see that the net worth is actually climbing in retirement, which to me is a miss, right? If your net worth in your 70s is actually going up, you have missed the point as to why you've worked so hard to get into the position that you're in. Like, to me, that trend means you're leaving money on the table. You're not going on enough trips. You're not spoiling your grandkids enough. You haven't picked up enough hobbies, whatever it is for you. But this is not what I want to see. I want to see them spending more. So I already know if I were to dig into this further, that my recommendations will eventually land on me recommending that they spend more, which is a win. But remember, they're done. Like, they need to get out of there now. So now we have to revisit this with a way sooner retirement date, which means a lot less investing in the future, a lot more withdrawals and things of that nature. So let's do that. So now we've kicked over to the base scenario, but they're retiring at 60. So the only change that has happened here is that I've pushed their retirement date forward. Let's scroll down and we've run into some red years. It's when they turn 84 is when Cameron and Mitchell will start to run into some financial hardship. Now, a year highlighted in red does not necessarily mean they're completely out of money. What it means is that they are at least out of liquid money and would have to start leaning on the house equity, which we can look at in a chart here as well. So again, if we scroll down all the way to their net worth, at the end here, it's not in negative territory. However, they have had to lean on the equity of their home, which for them ideally is something they don't want to have to do. They can see maybe it's something they are going to be forced into that kind of position, but they're not in negative territory, but they're certainly not making their ends meet the way they want to be. So this is a bit of a problem. So let's start doing some financial planning. So most of you watching will know that the first place I'm going to go to test things is CPP. And the default in here, especially considering they were retiring at 65 in the default anyways, the default is CPP at 65. And just a reminder, they were running out of money around age 84 in this scenario. So let's push CPP to 60. Let's see what happens. Well, now they're running out of money at age 79. That's made things worse. Now, CPP at 60, there is some valid arguments for why you would want to do that. It's just simply not the lens that I look at financial planning through. I like to make sure that the robustness of your foundational income is my top priority. So foundational income is not linked to a market and is reliable. So I very, very rarely recommend CPP at 60, but I always experiment with it just to see the impact that it has. Now, let's flip to what my bias definitely is, which would be a CPP delay to 70, and let's look at how that looks. All right, so here's the base scenario again. They're retiring at 60, but now CPP is at 70. Let's scroll down. No years highlighted in red. Just that one change has cleaned up this entire financial projection. To me, that just really helps illustrate the point of that delay, but I want to take it a step further. I want to put actual numbers to that. So let's go into some charts again one more time. So here we are in the charts for the CPP at 70 scenario. What I want to do is I want to come down here to the cash inflow. I'm going to get rid of everything except for CPP and OAS. This is what I call their foundational income. And let's pick a year at random, but after age 70. So let's pick this year, 2041. They both turned 75 that year. If the delay of CPP happens, they should be expecting, I'm not sure if you can see that number there, but $91,953 in that year from CPP and OAS combined. Now, mind you, that is before tax, so there will obviously be taxes factored off of that, but we're looking at just shy of $92,000. Their spending in that year is about $89,000. So if taxes didn't exist, then CPP and OAS would cover off 100% of their spending. They, of course, do exist, so the vast, vast majority is covered off by CPP and OAS. If we go back to the original projection and do that same thing, pull everything out of the equation except for CPP and OAS, look at that same year. Instead of $92,000, now we're looking at $69,000 of pre-tax CPP OAS money. That's a $20,000 difference at that stage. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about making your foundational income more robust for a long time period. If we go to the other example where CPP is at 60, now we're looking at $52,396 from those two sources combined. Nearly a $40,000 swing from if you had started at 60 versus if you had started at 70. And when you're in your 70s, my theory at the very least is I know you will be the least stressed in this environment when almost all, if not all of your spending is covered by the government. I think that's a win. That's how I approach it. So now we have a goal achievement of 101%, which, I mean, yay, we've crossed the 100% threshold, but 1% buffer is not a lot of buffer. And this is often where I go back to the client and say, okay, the question that you came to me was, Chad, I wanted to retire at 65, but now I need to retire at 60. Can I do that? The answer to Mitchell and Cam here is yes, you can, but on the spending that I have in here, which is $5,000 a month, are you enjoying your retirement or are you living day to day? And in their case, it's day to day. And I'm like, okay, so we need to see if we can bring more into this picture. Let me start by first just doing an RSP meltdown scenario just to see, does that actually make things better? Now, again, if you've watched the channel before, you know I am a fan of the meltdown, but I'm also not arrogant enough to say that my biases and assumptions will be right every time. And this is a great example of that. I tried a meltdown with them. I really tried to level out their taxes over the entirety of their projection, and I made it worse. It's 1% worse. They pay $2,000 more in taxes, and their estate takes a $17,000 hit. By no means is this a massive reduction or anything like that, but it made it worse, so I'm happy to just ignore that recommendation and keep it status quo. But going back to the question here, so we tried the meltdown, made it worse. Their question before was, well, we were really just living day to day on that 60,000. We do want to travel. And if I'm showing Mitch and Cam 101% goal achievement and the estate at the end is only leaving $34,000 of financial assets, it's a pretty safe assumption for me to make that something's going to have to change. You're not going to be able to travel on this level of margin. So in all likelihood, if you want to retire next year and you want to do the travel that you were talking about, which is about $10,000 a year, you are going to have to probably look at selling the house or making some other drastic change. Reluctantly, they agree and they say, okay, let's sell the house when we're 75 for 750,000 and we'll buy for 500 grand. We want to add travel from 60 all the way to 75 for 10 grand a year. How does it look? Here is that scenario, and yikes, it looks very rough. Now Cam and Mitch are running out of money at 68. That is something that I can't plan around. This is, we need to make some sort of massive shift time. And I say to people all the time, you may have heard me say this before, when you're at this stage in terms of proximity to retirement, the lever that you can pull on that makes the most impact for your financial plan is to work longer. And it's not because of the extra earning and the investing that you can do, although that is definitely part of it. The biggest part of it is that you are not withdrawing in those years. So Cam and Mitch, they're depressed at this point because I'm saying you probably have to work longer. But I'm not saying you have to work in the same environment. If your stress load is too much, you can always work in a different environment. So in the next scenario you'll see here, I have them working 3 more years, but instead of making their healthy incomes, I have them at, I think, $95,000 and $75,000 respectively. I have them both dropping down to $30,000 a year. So part-time job, maybe they do some consulting, something like that, for 3 years. So 30 grand each for 3 years. That, from the previous scenario, is the only change I've made. But because I've made that change, they don't have to do as much withdrawals from their investment accounts, and lo and behold, we've hit 100% goal achievement again. So now we've gone from retiring next year, delaying CPP to 70, 101% goal achievement, to you're actually retiring at 63. But for those 3 years, you're only working part-time, or you're working at a much, much lower wage at the very least, which should in turn reduce stress. We've added the travel in. So now we're at 115% goal achievement. They've spent an additional nearly $200,000 on themselves, and their estate is also going to take a positive $250,000 swing. To me, this could be a trade that makes sense to make. For you, maybe it doesn't. Maybe you just desperately need to get out, and instead I would look at maybe reducing your spending, something like that. Every case is different. So if it's time for me to review your financial plan, there will be a link in the description down below that comes directly to me. Until next time, keep planning.